First code for Facebook started way before then, right? So I, like probably a lot of you guys, just built a lot of stuff for myself. All throughout my childhood, I built games that I wanted to play. I built a music player that I wanted. I tried to build stuff that I really wanted for myself, right? And I was young. I wasn't building very high quality stuff. It was just stuff that I wanted, not for anyone else. And then when I got to college, I started wanting to build products that would let me get insight into the community around me and let me connect with the people around me. And that had the property that you can't actually just build something that only you use. If you want to be able to connect with people around you, you have to start building software that other people are going to use as well. So I actually...
You mean like Face Mash?
Well, before that, it's actually one of the, it's that stupid movie makes everyone think that Face Mash was this critical thing. But actually, a lot earlier than that, in my sophomore year, one of the first things that I built that was kind of like this was actually called Course Match. I don't think we've talked about this that much in any of these startup schools. It was, I was trying to figure out what classes I wanted to take my sophomore fall, and I wanted to see what other people who had taken the CS classes that I'd taken wanted to take, and what my friends were planning on taking and what they'd taken in the past. But there was no database like that was out there, so I thought, all right, well, how can I do this? So I went and I wrote this little script that scraped the course catalog and let people put in what classes they wanted, and I called it the course graph. And that was actually the first time. Yeah, I mean, it was actually, I made the mistake of running the website from a laptop in my dorm room, and my desk was right next to the bathroom, and there was like constantly steam pouring out of that from people showering, so the laptop actually fried, and I lost that one after like a few weeks of it running. But that was the first time that I had ever really set up a production, Apache server or MySQL server, or a lot of that stuff. And then, a lot of those things, then when I went on to build later stuff, I had those lessons and I knew that I could set those things up quickly, so those were just building blocks on top of which to build future things.
Did people put their classes in it? Did you use it to decide what to take?
Yeah, no, it was like 1,000 or 2,000 people out of the,
Really?
It was like 6,000 people at Harvard
Yeah.
used it. Yeah, so I mean, it worked fine. It was actually really interesting. People spent so much time just clicking through the links of people to see what classes they were in, and then in the classes they clicked on people who were the roster of the people, and it was I thought it was going to be interesting, and I wanted to solve this problem, but it was actually just way more compelling. And part of my theory at the time was, I looked at all the other types of content that were out there on the internet, right? It's like you could search for any music or news or content or reference material that you wanted, but part of my theory at the time was that people were really missing from the internet, right? And there were no services like that. And that's why I built some of these services that went in that direction, but I still think people are largely missing from a lot of the software that we build, which is why I'm focused on building this development platform today as part of Facebook, so that way the next generation of software that the industry builds can just be more human.
So every app that people build has this sort of additional dimension now, where you can sort of see what other people are doing too.
We're trying to go in that direction.
So you knew by the time you started Facebook that if you made some website, you could get thousands of people to show up to it.
Well, I didn't have a choice. I knew that if I wanted to do this, that I had to build something that would get people to use it. I didn't know if I could actually do that. So,
but it must have been a little bit surprising that thousands of people showed up and put their courses on, right? And if people would show up for something that wasn't even intended to draw thousands of people, you could probably do it again, right?
Well, yeah, and then I did a few more, and I was really focused on this idea of channeling a community's energy to build some kind of shared asset, whether it's the course graph or ultimately Facebook was a good example of this. I mean, one of my favorite stories from college that I think I've told at startup school before is I built the first version of Facebook during reading period, which is basically this 2 or 3 week period that Harvard, I don't know if they still give this, but basically.
They don't.
Yeah, I think they stopped. But,
shocking.
Well,
both Microsoft and Facebook started during reading period.
Yeah, so Harvard likes canceling things that work.
Yeah.
So basically, it's this period during January before your finals where you can ostensibly study for classes for your finals. And I took that period to write the first version of Facebook. I don't think I'd written any code for that project directly until really January, and then by the end of January, I was basically done with it. But then one day, I woke up a couple of days before this final for this class that I was taking called the Rome of Augustus. It was this lit in arts class, and the class was all about learning the historical significance of a bunch of pieces of art that were there. And for the final, they were just going to show some pieces of art from the class, and you had to write an essay on the significance of them. And I hadn't really gone to class all term. I just programmed. And then during reading period, when I should have been learning this, I programmed. And so I was pretty screwed, right? I mean, there's no way that I was going to cover all this material. So I just went to the course website, downloaded all the images, and made a little website that basically would randomly show in the images and would let you contribute your notes of what you thought was reasonable, or what was important about that photo.
Your notes
see
that
everyone
you had
else's.
Taken by going to class.
What's up? Yeah, that other people learned through hard work. And then I sent this out to the course email list. I was like, hey guys, I built a study tool. And within an hour, the whole thing was just populated with all the information that we needed to take the class, to take the final. So I think I did pretty well in the final. I don't remember the exact grade, but...
Tell us about some real-world system you have hacked to your advantage.
What's up?
That's an answer. That's a question on the YC application form. We actually ask for people having done a trick like that. That would get our attention. Incidentally, if you ever want to do YC. Well, it's funny, you know, the first couple times I met Mark, after all this time evaluating startup founders, I can't turn it off. So I'm like, the first couple times I met Mark, there would be this this side process running in my head saying, accepting him. And I would have to say, stop it, it's too late.
Well, now we get to work together on other things.
All right. No, I love it. I love it. One of the things we talked about last year was how when you first launched Facebook, the first other colleges you expanded to were ones that had competing services. So I didn't ask you at the time, but I wonder now, why did you win? What was it that Facebook had that the competing services didn't?
I think it was just this focus on real identity and the connections between people. But it goes back to this theme where before Facebook on the internet, you could find a lot of information about a lot of different types of content, but the thing that we as people care the most about, which is other people, right, around us, I mean, our brains are just wired that way, it wasn't there. And if you think about it, the reason is that, you know, that information about people isn't just out there on the internet to be indexed by some search engine, right? You can't just send a web crawler around and learn what's going on with people. You have to build tools that give people the power to share that content themselves. And that stuff didn't exist. And if you go back, you know, most of the way that people interacted online was anonymous, right? And the idea at the time was that it was pretty scary to put your name and real identity online without the right privacy controls and without kind of the right community infrastructure. So I think that that's a lot of what we built, was a framework where people would be comfortable sharing in that way. And
were people able to share less on these competing services? There were 3 universities you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean,
Stanford, Yale, and Columbia.
Yeah, they each had different things. I think some of them were just, they gave people less ways to express content about themselves. None of them, I think, had a concept of connections, right? So one of the things that, you know, if you think about friending...
You couldn't friend people.
Yeah, and if you think about friending today, I mean, one of the reasons why it's important is because you get the person's content in your newsfeed, right? And there was no newsfeed back then, right? So a lot of the reason that friending was good was just because you could put someone on your profile and say that you were connected to them. So just like people were more fascinated than intuitively it seemed like they should have been about looking and clicking through the classes that people were taking, a lot of people also just wanted to see who other people knew. There was nothing like that existed.
So you had friending from the beginning?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was a really critical piece.
So the missing thing,
real identity and connections.
They had the nodes of the social graph, but not the arcs?
Well, there was that, and I think there was less emphasis on real identity in the community. So some of these communities, you know, just like you made it so that people could sign up with a pseudonym, which is fine. I mean, I think that there are lots of services that are good with pseudonyms, but if you're talking about mapping out a real community, then you want that. Why does it have its drawbacks?